Hello, it's George here. It's kind of an off day for me regarding work. It's never an off day for YouTube, so I'm here in my driveway. I just shoveled because we had snow several days in a row kind of thing, or there were like the snow never ends here during the winter, and then you have to make room for the next one. Recently I showed you a video about my timing chain on this pickup truck that's behind me. I only showed you how I undid all the components to finally get to that chain, and I showed you the slack that was in it. Now, that's been done months ago, and I want to show you what was involved in putting this back together. So if you want to see that, well, this is your video. I have to turn the crankshaft until both my marks are lining up. There's a dot right there, and then there's another dot. I would like them to line up right here. That's the best scenario. They have to line up before I take any more parts off. So if I want to turn this crankshaft now, it's not that simple because my harmonic balancer is missing, and that normally provides the spacer for that bolt. So I have to find something else to fill that void. I found something. See, first there's the washer that comes with it, and then this is the castle nut from my suspension work, which provides a perfect spacer. Should be able to turn the crankshaft with this on there. I can see the dot on the bottom one. Okay, it's pointing straight up, and there's this one, see? So they are in line right now. Alright, I could take off the top gear. So I'm using the impact gun to get this off, simply because that way the crankshaft should stay where it is. Doesn't take much to get this one off. So now officially I cannot move the crankshaft anymore. So this is the old timing chain, see? Now I can take this contraption off again. The next step will be to remove this gear. Now this is press fit on there, and this is a crankshaft, so I have to be really careful not to mess anything up. So I'm gonna apply some heat to this. So I got my puller set up. It's not touching the threads there. I made sure. Now there isn't enough room here to connect the impact, so I'm gonna have to use the 1/2-inch ratchet. But first we're gonna heat this up. Nice little blue flame. I like it. That should do the trick. I'll go a little bit from the underside too. Don't want to heat up the crankshaft really, I just want to heat up that gear. Let's try. This is the timing gear. Ta-da! We finally got all the parts, and now it's a big job to clean everything up and put it back together. And there are a few things that could be tricky as far as I found out. Let's go over the parts here. This is the timing chain that I got. It's a double roller chain, and these gears, sprockets, they look a little bit different than the original ones that are like all dirty now. But yeah, at first my reaction was, well, this looks kind of flimsy. But this is made in USA, and this is actually supposed to be stronger than the OEM parts. Now here's my dirty timing chain cover. I put it in vinegar so this rust would go away, and see, I already brushed some of it off. And here is my seal kit, and I think the tricky part is going to be to put this seal back on, because I didn't even take the old one off yet, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I put a rag over the crankshaft here, but see, what it is the oil pan is holding this gasket on the sides. So what needs to happen is that 2 bolts from the oil pan need to be slacked off just a little bit in order first to get this out and then get the new one in there. It's this old seal. I wonder if I could clean that up and reuse it, but it's probably not a good idea. See these tabs here? They go between the oil pan. And then you have to put a whole bunch of silicone in there to make sure this is all sealed all around it, and that should do the trick. So I cleaned up my cover. There's now surface rust forming, but that's not a big deal. I'm still going to brush this off and wipe it off with alcohol before I give it a coat of engine enamel paint. My more pressing issue right now is this seal is actually a little bit different from the new one that I have. It's got a groove here that puts it right into the lip of the oil pan. And this neighbor, noisy car. Now what I have to do, I'm underneath the truck now. I clean off around these oil pan bolts. Yeah, I guess I should have washed the entire engine. Yeah, I want to get these bolts off, or at least slacked off enough. I don't want to get any dirt into the oil pan itself, so I'm trying to get as much of it off as I can. This I have to loosen, and this one I have to loosen more. I don't know, it looks to me like they're different sizes. Can you see that? So there's some flexibility in this oil pan, and I gotta get something jammed in between the pan and the engine blocks so that I'll be able to get my gasket in there. This is a 1/2 inch size socket. Back this off quite a bit. I don't want to remove the entire oil pan. That would not be fun. Maybe I should take these bolts right out. See, this doesn't work real well because it's got right there where these lines are. But I loosened it, that's all that matters. So, that's good. Now there's a sure thing I can't reuse this. This might be a one-piece gasket kind of thing, and I just wrecked it. But there's no choice. This has to come down ever so slightly to get this in. This, finally, I managed to put it in place. This is temporary. This has no sealant on there yet. The oil pan gasket itself, I had to cut it on both sides, and I used the new gasket strip that came with my gasket. I didn't have to cut that, but I had to cut the rail inside there that holds this gasket in place, just ever so slightly. As you can see, I got a screwdriver on each side jammed in there, and I don't really feel good about doing that, but there's just no other way to get this in, because you need just a little bit more clearance than this will give you. Obviously, it'll need some silicone at both ends and around this edge, and hopefully this will be just fine. I'm a little bit nervous about that, to be honest. The only engine enamel paint that I have for Chevrolet happens to be Chevrolet Orange. Well, I was using these for my bicycles, but I figured I might as well use it. The cover won't get all rusty and look like hell. Now that I'm doing work on my engine to preserve this a little bit better, you know. So while this dries, I'm going to go to my timing gears and the chain. We're going to see what's up with that, if I can get it all in there the way it's supposed to go. These sprockets don't look exactly the same, but they still have this marking and that marking, and the keyway is in the same spot. So we know that'll work. It's just a different type of chain. Supposedly the double roller chain that goes with this one is supposed to be more durable than this, which is the original equipment. I should be able to push this on there at least a little bit. I can get it started. See, from here on I would need some kind of force, and I don't want to do this forces too much. I'm gonna heat this up, but before I do, verify how this one fits. What I'm wiping here is the face of the camshaft, and I want this to be as clean as possible. But I'm also going to spray some brake cleaner into there, because we're going to add some Loctite to these bolts. They're supposed to be torqued 20 foot-pounds once they're in there. Once again, let's compare the old and the new. Here's the old one. You see the timing mark there. You see these holes, they are in a certain pattern. 3 bolt holes. One is for a pin that locks it into the position, and this one here, it appears like everything is in the same position. If I turn this like exactly the same angle, my mark is still in the same spot. That's important. Just checking if this all goes. It just fits perfectly. Yeah, my timing mark is still at the top. I'm considering to make a line go right through the middle, so then it's easier to line up with this one. What do you think? So there you have it. I just made myself a line right through the middle of the sprocket. So what I found to help me get this on is this socket, but it won't go quite far enough. So ideally I'd have another piece to go between there, like a spacer kind of deal. But I think as long as I get it this far, I might be able to take a punch and just go around the outside of it, bing, 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 and tap it the rest of the way. To remember is not to tap too hard because it's the crankshaft. So what you see is a broken scrap ceramic. I'm going to warm this up real good. I really don't want to tap this in. I would like to slide it on, if that's at all possible. Put those gloves on. Hopefully it'll slide right on there. This adventure doesn't go on any more than it did before. That's good so far. Okay, this is the crankshaft. We don't want to go overdo this, so I'm gonna get a punch. Punch a little bit here, a little bit down there. So my gear is on there, but now before going any further, I'm going to clean this gasket surface. Gotta clean that really well. Here's one tool that I like to use for scraping gasket surfaces. That's wood chisel. It's nice and sharp and it gives me a good handle. So I'm gonna go all around this surface. So I cleaned all this really good, and now I'm going to put these bolts in one by one, and they're supposed to be torqued to about 20 foot-pounds. I'm going to put a little bit of orange Loctite on there. This is a medium strength. It's service removable, but it is a little bit stronger than the blue stuff, and it is really hard to get the right amount onto the bolt. There, don't need much. It's just a little bit of an extra insurance, you know, you don't want these coming loose. Okay, what I'm doing in order to tighten this more accurately with more feel is I'm using the old gear to prevent the crankshaft from turning while I tighten these bolts. First I snug them up. I should really do this without the extension. Get a better feel on there. Yeah, these are good right there. Now I'm going to put just a tiny amount of this RTV around here. Usually the seal has something on there already that prevents a leak, but this being an old truck, there's always a chance of it not being perfectly smooth, and this is good enough. This will never leak. I just got to put it loosely like this, and now I'm putting this, and then I'm going to place it with my jack. Unfortunately, I don't have anything better than this gear. Let's see what happens. Like a hydraulic press is a beautiful thing, but if you can't see where you're pressing, So guys, it's almost getting dark here. It's time to call it quits, clean up. But I want to show you the way this goes in, because basically I got it in here right now. But as you can see, there's no gasket. And down here, the rubber seal seems to be all in place the way it needs to be. However, there needs to be sealant around the edges and all around here too. So for now, I'm just going to leave this in there like that. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to come back and install this for good. Yeah, so guys, that's it for tonight. I'm going to continue this tomorrow. Might as well call it quits while I'm ahead. When I get tired, I screw up. So I don't want to be in that situation. The sun has already set, so it's the next day, and I gotta clean all these gasket surfaces really well, because it's kind of iffy here with this bottom gasket that has to slide into place. There's going to be a lot of sealant involved, and unless I clean this really well, it's probably not going to work. Now, before I go ahead and install the cover, I'm also going to chase all these threads just to make sure it's going to hold as good as it possibly can. It's got to make sure that whatever comes out is wiped off the top. In order to have the proper torque and everything, even though I don't have a torque wrench this small, it's important that everything is super clean. So while I'm already doing this, I'm also doing the water pump bolts holes at the same time, because it's much easier now than later. Yeah, I'm definitely spending more time cleaning this than it takes to put this together. Now to the step of putting all the sealant on there. But my gasket's gonna go right on here, but I'm gonna put sealant on the gasket first, then on the housing, and then down here. Gotta make sure this is all covered. I can't afford a leak there. So I removed my screwdrivers there. Unfortunately, I didn't remember to turn on the camera first. Now I'm just going to place all these bolts. For now, I'm just going to leave them dry. Just put them finger tight for about an hour or so. So I don't want to squeeze out all my sealant. Okay, I'm gonna give each one just a little twist. Try to keep this as even as possible. Well, it's not done. There's also the bolts that I took out of the oil pan. Gotta do those right away. So these bolts, I consider them part of the front cover. So I'm gonna do it exact same way. Tighten them, not completely, so I can add some Loctite later on and then torque them to whatever. You know, look around this. I don't think this is gonna leak. I think this is in there good. That's another step done. Now I'm gonna have to put this all aside for a little bit and come back later in the afternoon, and then hopefully install the harmonic balancer and the water pump, and then yeah, the belts, got a new radiator hose, put the coolant back in, and then we're gonna be in business again, and this truck is gonna run like a charm. So you can call me crazy or super picky or whatever you will. Take each bolt back out one at a time, mind you. Put some Loctite on there, and that's when I'm gonna torque it down, because I don't want them to come off ever unless I decide to take them off. once again, I do this in stages. Same pattern, just finger tight, using the 1/4 inch drive. Now I go around, same idea. So to finalize this, I went around the whole thing one more time, make sure they're all tight. So the next step on this repair is the harmonic balancer. It's nice and orange now, but the groove is still there. But there's a remedy, and it's called a speedy sleeve. So let's try and get that on. This sleeve comes with the cup to knock, so it slides down. I think it'd be a good idea to still heat it up. Yeah, just to make it fit easier. That's the idea. Very thin metal, so we're going to leave it at that. Ta-da! Like brand spanking new. Now I'm going to lubricate this seal, and then I'm going to lubricate the balancer as well. Might need a little bit more here. Now this harmonic balancer is held in place by this bolt. It is 7/16 fine thread, and it's not long enough to install the balancer on there, on the crankshaft. So what I had to do, like a lot of people on YouTube, they seem to get a bolt that only costs $2. Well, I tried that. You know, most bolts, the threads, even though if they're longer, the threads aren't longer than this. So what I had to do is get a threaded rod that was $15. It's way longer than I needed. Now I have to cut it so that I can make my own installer out of that. Threading this in there as far as it'll go. And now the pipe wrench will keep my threaded rod and the crankshaft from turning. And unfortunately I don't have a 7/16 wrench, so I have to use this adjustable. Now it's extremely hard to go any further. But it still goes. Just fine thread, you know. So this seems to be at the end right there. That should be good. Now this is practically all done, but I have to torque this bolt on the balancer to 70 foot-pounds, and it might be challenging because I have to hold the pulley at the same time. I don't know if I can do that. Let's see what happens. So far, so good. I blocked it with the belt. That's it. So the rest of this, it was fairly straightforward. You just kind of put back all the parts you took off before, including the water pump, the belt, the idler pulley, all that kind of stuff. Easy. Not sure why I didn't record that. Probably I was just on the mission to get the job done. My battery on the GoPro might have died. I don't know. But you get the idea. Like putting back a water pump and all this is relatively easy. You know, the challenge for when you have a timing chain is basically just to get the timing right, put the chain on, put the balancer back on, and yeah, definitely the cover, because you need a little bit of extra clearance in order to push that in on the bottom half, because the way the gasket is shared between the oil pan and that cover. Other than that, the job is pretty simple, and that's the advantage of having an old truck like this. So I hope you forgive me for the lack of showing everything. There was enough footage to go through just to come up with this, and I hope you liked it. I hope you give me a thumbs up and perhaps subscribe.